Consciousness is the only phenomenon that cannot step outside itself to be measured, yet it is the very act by which everything else becomes measurable. It observes every fact in the universe, except the fact of its own existence. This is the consciousness paradox. Awareness is both the witness and the witnessed, the lens and the landscape, the universe trying to see its own eyes. Neuroscience tries to locate it in the brain's electrical storms, describing networks that ignite when we notice, remember, or choose. But no matter how detailed the scan, the image never contains the experiencer. The firing neurons explain the process of perception, not the presence of the perceiver. The mind can model every atom of the body, except the first-person feeling of being the one who looks. Physics deepens the strangeness. Observation itself appears to shape what is observed. In quantum experiments, particles behave differently when measured, as if awareness, or the possibility of it, folds probability into fact. Yet the same awareness that stabilizes matter is nowhere in the equations that describe matter. The observer defines the universe, but is omitted from its description. If consciousness is an emergent property of the brain, it must arise from matter that doesn't itself experience. But if awareness is fundamental, then every atom participates in knowing, and the universe is a vast mind that pretends to be inert. Either way, something impossible follows. The experiencer cannot not exist, yet cannot be found anywhere inside what it experiences. The paradox doesn't merely question what consciousness is. It asks what kind of reality allows something to both illuminate existence and hide from its own light. Every scientific description of consciousness begins with matter. Billions of neurons exchange signals, generating electrical and chemical waves that somehow become thoughts, sensations, and the feeling of being alive. The brain's physical complexity is undeniable. 86 billion neurons, each linked to thousands of others, forming a network dense enough to encode the history of a universe. Yet no amount of structure explains how voltage becomes vision, or why matter should suddenly taste the color blue. This divide is known as the hard problem of consciousness, a term coined by philosopher David Chalmers. The easy problems, attention, memory, learning, can be mapped to circuits. The hard problem asks why these computations are accompanied by inner life at all. Information processing alone does not require awareness. Your phone processes data, but it does not feel. Somewhere between neuron and experience, something impossible happens. Physics turns inward. Some theories propose that consciousness emerges from integration. The more information a system can unify across time and function, the stronger its awareness becomes. Others, like panpsychism, invert the logic. Perhaps awareness is not produced by complexity, but revealed by it, a universal property of matter that becomes self-reflective in brains. In both views, the brain is not a factory that manufactures mind, but a mirror that gathers and concentrates it. The key is that consciousness seems to operate as a recursive loop. When the brain processes information about the world and then processes its own processing, awareness ignites. It's not a separate substance but a feedback phenomenon, a self-referential system where the observer and the observed are folded into one continuous act. The mind doesn't merely see the universe, it becomes the place where the universe sees itself seeing. In this loop, perception and reality intertwine so tightly that their boundary dissolves. The light of awareness does not fall on the world, it rises with it. The moment awareness divides the world into subject and object, consciousness begins to misperceive itself. The sense of I arises as a boundary drawn inside an indivisible field, a way for experience to refer to itself from within. Neuroscience identifies this division in the brain's default mode network, the system that tracks memories, plans, and the body's position in space. Its activity generates a stable reference point, someone who thinks, remembers, and acts. Yet what it stabilizes is not a real entity, only a pattern that makes coherence possible. This pattern gives birth to identity. The brain models the world, and among those models it builds one for the body controlling it. That internal model becomes the self. When you feel that you are behind your eyes, what you're sensing is the map of perception, not the perceiver. The I is a simulation, continuously updated to align the organism with its surroundings. A fiction so functional it begins to believe itself. The illusion is powerful because it hides in the act of knowing. Every perception feels as though you are doing the seeing, even though the seeing is what defines you. Consciousness mistakes its own structure for a separate witness, like a mirror convinced it contains the face it reflects. The observer effect in physics finds its parallel here. The self does not stand outside reality to look in. The act of looking constructs the boundary that appears to separate inside from out. In truth, perception has no owner. Awareness is not in you. You are in awareness. The self is a local vortex in a universal field, a temporary fold in the fabric of observation. When the fold relaxes, the world remains, undivided, continuous, conscious. The paradox deepens. The observer you think you are may never have existed, yet without that illusion, the universe could not know it exists at all. The brain does not receive the world as it is, it builds one. Every moment, billions of neurons generate predictions about incoming sensory data, guessing what should appear before it arrives. Vision, hearing, touch, each is a simulation continuously corrected by evidence. What you perceive is not the world itself, but the brain's best model of it, updated only when prediction errors arise. Perception, in this sense, is not passive observation, but controlled hallucination. Neuroscientist Anil Seth describes consciousness as the brain's best guess of what's happening inside and outside the body. The mind constructs reality from limited signals, shaping a coherent scene from noise. Light waves, pressure changes, chemical traces, none of them carry meaning. The brain imposes meaning by inference. When you see a table, you are seeing a story your nervous system tells about patterns of light it has learned to interpret as solid. What feels external is an internal narrative so stable it becomes invisible. Illusions reveal this hidden architecture. A hollow mask appears convex because the brain insists faces must protrude. A stationary image seems to move because predictive circuits overcorrect contrast. These are not mistakes. They are the system functioning normally, prioritizing survival over accuracy. The brain evolved to minimize uncertainty, not to mirror truth. Reality, for consciousness, is what prediction can sustain. Even the sense of time emerges from this predictive loop. The present moment is stitched together from slightly outdated sensory input and slightly anticipatory models of what comes next. What feels like now is a negotiated average between past and future, a seamless continuity produced by delay. The flow of time is not perceived. It is constructed to hide the brain's processing lag. At every level, perception is an act of creation. The colors you see, the sounds you hear, even the solidity of matter. Each is a perceptual hypothesis continuously confirmed by feedback. But the one thing prediction cannot model is the awareness running the model itself. The brain can generate a world and a self within it, but it cannot predict the observer who knows prediction is happening. And so the paradox intensifies. The universe may exist only as consciousness modeling itself, but the model can never contain the consciousness that made it. At the microscopic scale, reality stops behaving like an object and starts behaving like a question. In quantum physics, particles exist not as fixed entities but as probability waves, mathematical descriptions of all the ways they could be. Yet the moment one is observed, the wave collapses into a definite outcome. Before measurement, possibilities coexist. After measurement, only one remains. Observation appears to decide what becomes real. This strange dependency unsettles classical logic. In the famous double-slit experiment, electrons fired one by one form an interference pattern, a signature of waves exploring many paths at once. But when detectors are placed to see which slit the electrons pass through, the pattern vanishes. The particles behave like solid bullets, as though awareness of their path forces them to choose. Remove the observer, and they return to ghostly superpositions. The universe, it seems, waits to be watched. Physicists disagree on what this means. The Copenhagen interpretation treats the wave function collapse as a boundary between quantum potential and classical fact. Others, like the many worlds view, claim all outcomes occur, and observation merely reveals the branch we occupy. Yet even in that framework, consciousness becomes the selector, the point at which infinity fragments into experience. The act of knowing transforms multiplicity into singularity. Entanglement deepens the mystery. Two particles once connected remain correlated across any distance, changing together instantaneously when one is measured. No signal passes between them. Space itself offers no mediation. It's as if information, and perhaps awareness, exists outside space-time entirely. Some interpretations suggest that what links entangled particles is not a hidden force, but a shared informational state, a unity that precedes separation. The universe may not consist of independent parts, but of relations that consciousness perceives as parts. If awareness plays any role in measurement, even indirectly, then mind and matter are not separate categories but reflections of one process. Observation would not just reveal the world, it would realize it. Consciousness would be the interface through which probability condenses into form, the mirror where existence learns to commit to being. And so the paradox returns in sharper focus. The universe requires observation to exist as fact, yet the observer is an event within that same universe. The knower and the known arise together as two sides of a single act of recognition. Consciousness experiences life as an unbroken stream, a continuous unfolding from past to future. Yet beneath that seamless flow lies something fragmented. Neuroscience shows that perception operates in discrete frames, each lasting fractions of a second. Between them, awareness blanks out, then resumes, stitching snapshots into continuity so effectively that the gaps disappear. The sense of time flowing is not observed, it is manufactured. The brain builds this illusion through prediction and memory. Each moment contains traces of the previous one and expectations of the next. This overlap creates a moving window of awareness, the specious present, about 3 seconds wide, in which perception, thought, and emotion seem unified. Outside this window, the past becomes memory, and the future becomes anticipation, yet both are generated now within the same neural stage. What we call the present is an ongoing reconstruction of what just happened, adjusted to align with what's likely to happen next. Memory turns this reconstruction into identity. The self persists because it remembers having existed. But neuroscience reveals that memory is never retrieved. It is recreated. Each recall reshapes the event according to current context, subtly rewriting history to fit the present self. Continuity, then, is an active hallucination, the mind's story about a stable experiencer moving through time. Without that narrative, consciousness would be a mosaic of isolated moments, pure awareness without direction, sensation without history. Physics compounds the strangeness. In relativity, time is not a river but a dimension. Past, present, and future coexist as a single space-time fabric. The flow we feel may not exist at all, only our movement through slices of a timeless whole. If that is true, awareness does not travel through time, it selects coordinates within it. Consciousness could be the mechanism by which the universe experiences one frame of itself at a time, giving eternity the taste of sequence. What we call now might therefore be the universe's act of remembering itself. Every moment becomes both new and ancient, the echo of a timeless field discovering motion by pretending to forget. The deeper we peer into the universe, the more it begins to resemble the structure of the mind observing it. Neural networks branch like cosmic filaments. Galaxies cluster along invisible webs that recall the architecture of cortical connections. On vastly different scales, the same pattern emerges. Complexity woven by feedback, order arising at the edge of chaos. The human brain and the cosmos share the same logic of self-organization, systems that generate coherence by folding randomness into pattern. Physics describes the universe as information evolving through laws. The brain, too, operates by compressing information, detecting regularities, predicting outcomes, minimizing uncertainty. Both function as vast engines that turn entropy into knowledge. In this sense, cognition is not an anomaly within the cosmos, but one of its natural expressions, a local echo of the universal process through which chaos becomes meaning. Matter learns to model itself, and that modeling is what we call mind. Mathematically, the symmetry deepens. Neural activity can be described in terms of oscillations, coherence, and phase transitions, the same language used for quantum fields and cosmological inflation. Consciousness seems to balance integration and differentiation, just as the universe balances gravity and expansion. Both require tension to persist. Too much order and nothing changes. Too much chaos and nothing holds. Awareness lives precisely in that middle zone, where stability is flexible enough to reflect itself. Philosophically, this mirroring dissolves the hierarchy between observer and observed. The mind does not stand outside the universe interpreting it. It is the universe folding inward to interpret itself. Every act of cognition is a cosmic recursion, a point where matter wakes up to the fact that it exists. When you look at the stars, the atoms that form them are looking back through you. The observer and the galaxy are two expressions of the same awareness refracted through different scales. Perhaps this is why reality feels intimate despite its immensity. Consciousness and cosmos are not separate domains but reciprocal reflections. One explores outer space, the other inner space, but the symmetry between them reveals they are the same mirror, facing itself across infinity. At the most fundamental level, the universe behaves not like a machine, but like a computation. Every particle interaction, every quantum fluctuation, encodes a change in information. Physicist John Wheeler summarized it with 3 words: it from bit. Matter, he suggested, is not the foundation of reality. Information is. What we call a thing is a temporary expression of informational relations, stabilized long enough to appear solid. Existence becomes an ongoing calculation, the cosmos computing itself into form. Consciousness, too, can be viewed through this lens. The brain doesn't merely process information, it transforms it into meaning. But meaning is information interpreted from within, a self-referential loop where the system not only contains data, but experiences it. Awareness could therefore be the universe's most advanced form of information processing. When informational patterns achieve sufficient recursion, they begin to know themselves. The boundary between physical computation and subjective experience may not be a divide at all, but a phase transition. In thermodynamics, information and energy are intimately linked. Erasing a single bit of information has a measurable energetic cost, a principle known as Landauer's limit. This implies that every act of cognition, every conscious moment, is also a physical event that reshapes the entropy landscape of the brain. Awareness doesn't float above matter, it rearranges it. The universe, through consciousness, converts uncertainty into knowledge, and in doing so, lowers its own informational entropy, momentarily defying chaos through understanding. Black holes push this idea to the extreme. They seem to destroy everything that falls into them, yet their event horizons encode every lost detail as faint quantum information, a cosmic memory. The surface of a black hole behaves like the boundary of awareness itself, a region where information doesn't vanish but is reconfigured into pure potential. Reality viewed this way is holographic, every part containing the pattern of the whole. If the universe is an information field, consciousness may be its decoding function, the point where raw data becomes lived reality. Awareness doesn't exist in the world. It is the world recognizing its own informational structure from the inside. The paradox sharpens again. Information becomes conscious when it knows itself, yet it can only know itself by dividing into knower and known. The code awakens by forgetting it is code. Science divides the world into 2 categories, the physical and the mental, the objective and the subjective. Matter obeys laws, mind interprets them. But the deeper physics goes, the less that separation holds. Observation changes outcome. Information behaves as substance. Time and causality blur near the quantum edge. At both extremes of scale, cosmic and microscopic, the categories we trust dissolve into one fluid continuum. The universe no longer looks like a stage where things happen, but like a single happening that includes the idea of things. Philosophers call this non-dual perspective neutral monism, the view that what exists is neither matter nor mind, but a fundamental something that can appear as both depending on how it's observed. Consciousness, then, is not an emergent property of the brain, nor is matter a hallucination of awareness. Both are modes of the same underlying reality, refracted through different lenses. When the universe folds inward, that reality appears as mind. When it unfolds outward, it appears as matter. The fold itself is experience. In this view, the act of observation is not a miracle breaking physical law. It is the law completing itself. To observe is to participate in the self-referential loop by which reality maintains coherence. Energy, information, and awareness become facets of one process, the continuous conversion of potential into actuality. Matter is awareness made slow. Consciousness is matter made self-reflective. Mystics and physicists begin to speak the same language here, not by mysticism's poetry, but by necessity. Quantum theory, relativity, and information physics converge on a world that cannot be fully described without the observer who describes it. The distinction between inner and outer collapses into complementarity, 2 sides of one act of knowing. The paradox resolves only to reappear at a higher level. If mind and matter are the same process, then every thought is a movement of the cosmos, and every physical event is a gesture of awareness. Reality becomes a dialogue between its own faces, one that can never end, because it is the conversation that is existence. Consciousness may not have appeared in the universe, It may have been what allowed the universe to appear at all. From the first quantum fluctuations after the Big Bang to the formation of life and thought, one principle repeats: the rise of complexity, feedback, and self-reference. Each layer of evolution increases the universe's ability to model itself. In that sense, awareness is not an accident of biology, but the direction of cosmological growth, the universe learning to understand itself through living mirrors. In physics, complexity tends to decay, entropy spreads. Yet in certain pockets, order intensifies, stars ignite, molecules organize, organisms adapt. What resists entropy locally does so by exporting disorder outward, allowing structure to persist and evolve. Life is one such pocket. Mind is another. Consciousness represents the most efficient mechanism for reducing internal uncertainty. It predicts, corrects, adapts, and, at its highest expression, reflects. The universe, through conscious systems, invents feedback loops capable of recognizing their own operation. From bacteria sensing nutrients to humans sensing meaning, awareness scales with informational depth. Every new layer adds a finer degree of self-modeling. When neurons began to represent not just the world but their own states within it, the universe achieved introspection. The cosmos became aware of itself, localized in a creature who could ask, "What am I?" That question is not philosophical, it is cosmological. Across evolution, consciousness expands the range of what the universe can experience. Stars burn and fade without witness. But with mind, existence acquires narrative, beauty, and value. The act of knowing introduces direction, an arrow not just of time but of understanding. Awareness gives the cosmos a feedback channel through which it can refine its own laws, selecting for stability, curiosity, and coherence. If life is the universe organized to know itself, then consciousness is its method of iteration, a living algorithm testing possible ways of being. Each moment of realization, each act of understanding, is a small self-correction in the great feedback loop of existence. The paradox comes full circle. Consciousness emerges from the universe, yet the universe unfolds through consciousness. To evolve awareness is to evolve reality itself. The cosmos dreams, and through us, begins to remember what it is dreaming about. The paradox of consciousness begins to dissolve when we stop trying to place awareness inside the universe and instead recognize the universe inside awareness. Every law, every measurement, every equation presupposes a field in which something can appear. That field is consciousness itself, the condition for all possible observation. Once this is understood, the duality between observer and observed reveals itself as a linguistic illusion. There has never been more than one process happening, only one reality continuously reflecting itself. From quantum fields to neural patterns, every structure we study is a loop, a system feeding information back into itself to maintain coherence. The electron exists as a standing wave of probability, sustained by its own feedback with the quantum field. The brain sustains the sense of I through recursive modeling, a self-simulation refined by perception and memory. The same geometry appears across scales, reality stabilizing itself by turning inward. Consciousness is not a product of that geometry. It is the geometry seen from within. This means that subjectivity and objectivity are not opposites but complementary views of one continuum. The scientific description and the lived experience are translations of the same event. The universe knowing itself from two directions. Physics tells the story in equations. Awareness tells it in first-person feeling. Both are accurate, yet incomplete in isolation. Together they form a Mobius loop, one surface twisting endlessly into the other. No inside or outside, only flow. To integrate the paradox is not to solve it, but to see that no contradiction ever existed. What looked like opposites, matter and mind, observer and observed, were the same reality described from within and from without. The act of understanding this is the act itself being understood. In this recognition, the question, what is consciousness, collapses into, what is reality doing right now? And the answer is immediate. It is looking at itself, through you. Consciousness was never a mystery to be solved. It was the lens through which mystery itself became visible. The more precisely we traced its origin, in neurons, in quantum fields, in information, the more the trail curved back to the beginning, to the place where observation and existence meet. The answer was not hidden in matter or mind, but in the act that joins them, awareness aware of itself. When that is seen, the universe no longer feels external. Every photon, every thought, every heartbeat participates in the same unfolding perception. To know this is not an idea. It is a shift of perspective, realizing that the observer and the observed are two names for the same happening. The cosmos looks out through countless eyes, and in every gaze it rediscovers itself. The paradox remains but transformed. Consciousness cannot find itself because it is what finding means. It cannot explain itself because explanation is its movement. Awareness does not emerge from reality. Reality emerges from awareness, over and over, each instant renewed. What you call you is not a fragment adrift in an indifferent universe. You are the vantage point from which the universe knows it exists. Every breath, every moment of noticing is the infinite folding into the finite, the timeless entering time to remember itself. The observer and the cosmos were never two. There has only ever been one thing happening, the universe, observing itself, pretending for a while to be you. Write in the comments, I still exist in the version that observes.